Hello CSL, what's up? We're back today with the fourth episode of our videocast. Coach Fury here, and today I'm joined by a different guest for once. Miles isn't joining me. I'm joined here today with Boston GM Dennis. Dennis, how's it going all the way from Germany?
Everything fine over here. A bit rainy, but all fine.
It's all good. I imagine it's good because you guys qualified very comfortably for the World Cup finals last week. Looking pretty solid.
That's true. Only wins. I think the best record ever. Ever in the qualifying.
Yeah, amazing. The only team that I've been saying to my friends and colleagues that the only team that actually looks like they have no weaknesses at the moment, really. So it must be very confident over there and going into the World Cup anyway.
Yeah, hopefully it will be a nice year for us. So maybe we can win another one, just like in 2014. But you never know. There are some other good teams. Maybe not England, but
definitely not England. I mean, we haven't been too great. We've done our usual thing and qualified comfortably, but unconvincingly. So we'll see how it goes. But should be good World Cup finals anyway. But we're not here today to talk about football or soccer or whatever you want to call it. We're actually here to talk about the CSL, and we've got an announcement and some discussions coming later that may be interesting to some of the general managers in the league who are looking to get some insider snippets for some of the things that are going on anyway. But before we talk about that, let's talk about your team and talk about the Boston Celtics. And it's been an interesting year for you guys, hasn't it? I mean, you've got a good record at the moment. I'll pull up the league standings so we can sort of have a look. But 42 wins and 24 losses, and this is the year that I think you've quoted that you're tanking this year, but you seem to be doing pretty well. So, do you want to give the guys a bit of an insight into how your year's gone and what you're looking for the rest of this season?
Yeah, of course. The problem this year is that Doug is owning our picks, so we have to win, as we don't want to give Phoenix another good player, as they are already strong enough. From next year on, we are planning to trade out of talent, so keep on our movement towards Youth. But this year it's still a good record for us. We are on pace for another 50-win season, which means I think it's the 6th or 7th one with 50 wins in a row. So looks pretty good so far. I hope no one gets injured, which is our biggest problem the last few seasons. And playoffs are always open, so maybe we can get out of the first round this year.
I was just about to say that. So for those who follow the CSL, I think the playoff picture for Boston in the past few years has been a bit up and down. Do you think this is the year that you finally crack the first round, or do you think that we're probably a little way off of that? Perhaps this team's possibly overachieving a little bit at the moment in terms of looking like they're going to be a comfortable seed in the playoffs, but necessarily not taking anything away when they get to that end of the regular season and into the postseason.
We already made it to the second round a few times. We already lost to, I think 2 years ago, we lost to Detroit when they won their championship in the second round, only 4-3. So we haven't been too bad in the playoffs, but due to all the injuries, we didn't make it far. This year, I think in the East, Toronto might be the best team so far and will be in the playoffs, because Detroit lost 2 of their key members, or the best rotation players, in Capo Pope and Harrell. So I don't think John will be able to get over that. Even so, their team is still pretty good. Afterwards it's fairly open, I think. Chicago isn't as good as I thought, KD. So they might struggle. No idea about the Cavaliers. So maybe we can get out of the first round, or maybe we can make it past the second round too. But it depends on who we are meeting. So we will see. No idea, to be honest.
No. I mean, so you've made a couple of trades this year, and I'm not going to go into the detail and discuss the trades because they're a little while ago now. But just the highlights were obviously you traded Westbrook, brought in Macklemore and some picks and some other pieces. I think at the deadline day you moved Farid for Gordon. Is it just a retooling, or is it just accepting the fact that perhaps Westbrook and Farid weren't going to get you over the hump, and accepting probably taking that half step back to try and get past that and get back into sort of the elite of the Eastern Conference?
Actually, I think the biggest problem was that Farid, Westbrook, and Conley actually never played together in the postseason because one of them was always injured. So as we got pretty frustrated with Westbrook, we decided to trade him. And in Macklemore, I think we got a good, decent young shooting guard. I mean, he's shooting like, I have no idea, 44% from 3-point, or roughly around that number. And we got also the Lakers pick next year, which will hopefully be top 10, and the Clippers pick this year, which we actually thought might be top 5, but yeah, credit to Black Ice, he somehow turned it around, even though he's playing his guys for like 38 minutes a game, which is a bit crazy, and I have no idea how they can stay healthy. And we traded Farid because I do believe that Aaron Gordon is a better player. His defense is better. He's not the greatest rebounder like Farid is, but he's putting up some like 8 rebounds per game too, so it's solid. Yeah, he reminds me a bit of Solomon, and I'm a big fan of him. Yeah, and I think we also traded Stone, for which we got a very, very good haul. I think we got the Spurs pick, the Charlotte pick for him, Kyle Anderson, something else, I can't remember what else. I think Mickey is a pretty good player too. So yeah, the goal was to get as many picks as possible, and we have like 8 or 9 now. And yeah, so next year I will go on and we will trade Conley most likely. So without him, we should be pretty bad. And yeah, we'll look on what comes next. I have no idea, but yeah, plan is to suck as hard as possible next season.
So yeah, I mean, I've pulled your the team page up and just looking through. I mean, first thing is Gordon is one of those players I think who, if you talk to guys around the league, he's definitely a Marmite type person. For those of you who don't understand the reference, you either love him or you absolutely hate him. He seems to be a guy that some people are absolutely bought into and think that he is a really, really good post player and has some really good potentials. Others seem to think that he's probably been quite lucky in that he's been in Utah and been surrounded by good personnel and possibly not as good as other post players who he's compared to. So interesting to see how he does with you guys. Obviously you were interested in him, and obviously one of those guys sitting in the love camp for him. So that's interesting. But I mean, in terms of looking at the Celtic situation, I mean, the roster at the moment looks fairly strong. I mean, just looking at the picks, like I said, I pulled the page up, and you've got, is it 5 picks potentially this year, and then 2 next year, and then 2 the following year. So I mean, there's a lot of options there, a lot of opportunity. Is it a thought that you're thinking to potentially use those picks and draft, or to potentially trade and get a couple of star players, similar to what Dallas did in their situation, where they moved a lot of their assets that they had to acquire players who are more ready now to try and win a championship? Is that your thought, or are you thinking more along the lines of longer term, getting youngsters in, developing them, and trying to build that way?
Actually, I don't mind either way. When I look at picks, it's like stocks. During the season, they're pretty much worthless, and during the draft, they're worth so much. You get offers that are crazy. So if someone offers me something stupid and I have to take it, I will take it definitely. But I don't mind drafting some young guys, and to develop them and to build a more balanced team like Phoenix or Sacramento, etc. did. So yeah, we'll see what comes around on draft day. So every one of you, feel free to offer something I can't turn down. But so far, I think the class is decent, and there are coming some good players into the league. And yeah, even at like, I think we have the Houston pick, which is around the 10th, and we have the Clippers pick, which might be around the same region. So we should add two decent role players at least, or third starters. And yeah, then we can build it on from there and have McLemore and Gordon on top. So we have 4 or 5 starters, and have the Lakers pick, which will convert to next year because it's top 29 protected as far as I know. Yeah, and then we hopefully have a young and decent starting 5, which we can use for like seasons maybe.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, an interesting analogy actually you said there of the draft picks being almost like stocks, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of GMs across the league don't really appreciate, in that they are essentially assets and they do go up and down in value, and like you said, they go up and down in value at different points in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the off season. But I mean, obviously a lot of picks, a lot of things to talk about in terms of the draft for that, and a lot of things to consider. And that's kind of the main point of why we're here today, really, is to talk about the draft. And the reason we're talking about the draft in particular, I don't know if you want to share the spoiler with the audience, or whether you want me to sort of dive straight in and talk about it. But I mean, we're here today to talk about the draft board, and we're going to talk about the draft board for a particular reason. I don't know if you want to tell the audience the reason why we're going to talk about the draft, and sort of spend the rest of this podcast talking about rookies and players who are coming into the league.
I think most of the guys know anyway that I'm Chad Ford, so I was helping the draft guys for some time already and helped creating this class, and yeah.
So if I had
behind the scenes,
if I had the right piece of software on my laptop, I would certainly be doing the drums right now with the. But unfortunately, I haven't got that, so it's over to you, really. So yeah, like you said, you're Chad Ford, which means you're involved with the draft, which hopefully gives us a bit of an interesting discussion to talk about here. Lots of things we can talk about. Where do you want to dive in, really? I mean, I've got the draft board up.
But I think we should reveal something else, that Tim actually doesn't have the time to post much stuff because he's searching for a job, etc. And yeah, tries to relocate as far as I know. So we decided to bring you on because you're familiar with podcasts, and we decided to make more podcasts in the future, as it's easier than writing articles and it's faster, you can cover more topics. Yeah, so that everybody knows, you will be on the team from now on. You have no access to this year's ratings, as we think already too many have. So we decided to bring you on for the ratings, etc. from next season on. But you will help us to cover this year's class with media like podcasts, so that everybody is informed about that too. Yeah,
so probably a case of the having the short straw. I think I was the last option really for you guys, but it should be interesting. We'll have a chat about a few things, and we can go wherever you want, really. So I mean, we've got the board up. Is there anything else you wanted to sort of talk about with the draft and the team itself, or you have to sort of dive in and talk about some players?
We can talk about the board and some players if you want.
Okay, so I've got the board up. I've got the latest one, which I think has I'll just run you through the top 5 just for reference. So we've got Bender, Simmons, Korkmaz, I can't say his name, Inglis, Cousins as the top 5. Right. Big change there, I think, from the previous one was Cousins jumping up 6 places from about 11th to 5th. But I mean, do you want to start with like the top of the class, or should we talk about the bottom or the middle, or what is the burning thing in your head, Dennis, that you really want to talk to the audience about in terms of the draftees coming in?
Actually, we can talk about everything that comes to your mind. I have no particular guy I want to talk about. I have no special thing I want to talk about. We can talk about how often guys get scouted and maybe who should get scouted more often in the future. And yeah,
Okay.
what else? I'm free to talk about everything you want.
Okay. So one thing that I want to know, just out of interest, is so there's been a lot of discussion around Ben Simmons as being the clear-cut number one pick this year. Some have said that he has some incredible passing and handling skills, and he's got defense and he's got scoring, and he's like almost like the second coming of David Robinson, from what I can understand talking to people, in the sense that he has pretty much everything in his game. Not the height, obviously, of David Robinson, but the skill set. One thing I'm interested in talking to you about really is that, so we had the Youth Summer League, a couple of months of it, sort of the last month and the month before that. And for me, looking at the games and the stats of players, Simmons isn't one that has stood out in that. And for me, looking in as a neutral sort of initially before we made a couple of trade transactions at the deadline, I mean, Simmons is one that didn't stand out, and yet people are still touting him as the clear number one. Is this another similar situation to I can't remember the guy's name now, but in the real life NBA, the Anthony Bennett, who got drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, who he never lived up to his ratings, but always people hyped him as that number one pick initially. Is it the same situation, or are we not seeing something that Simmons clearly has and can clearly bring to this league?
Actually, I do believe Simmons will be the best player ever drafted, to be honest. But the problem so far for him in the US League, for example, is that he might need some preference work. Also, I don't know if most GMs already know, it's if a player drives more often or has a higher drive rating, he also tries to score more often. At least that's what I've noticed when I was part of the last 7 seasons. So he has actually, I think, a pretty low drive preference, which means he might not score as often as he should or could. Also, I think, I don't have the sheet open right now, but as far as I remember is that he's pretty developed everywhere but in the scoring column, and he can't score much from outside. So yeah, if he would drive more often, I believe he could be a better scorer and would put up more fancy numbers. So far, he's putting up numbers you might not see in the stats section, like tough defense, and yeah, it's pretty good in the assist turnover ratio, stuff like that. So I do think he's definitely the first pick, in my opinion. Even though there are some players that might challenge him, but in the long haul, he should be the guy.
So you made a really bold statement before you started talking about Simmons and saying he will be the best player ever drafted. So I feel I've got to sort of step in here, because we've heard a lot of talk in previous drafts about top talent and the draft team saying, oh, he's the best player, he's going to be the best player in the league, you watch, he's going to be the best player in the league. And we have seen some absolute failures with the top of the class in terms of players being really, really hyped up, coming into the league and basically delivering absolutely nothing. Is this? Are you willing to stick your hat on Ben Simmons and say that he will possibly one of the best players ever to enter the league, or are you going to retract that statement now?
You know, if he develops, he will be. But you never know. I mean, look at some of my classes. The one I created ended up like being only second rounders, pretty much, because no one developed. Like, who was it? Bruno Caboclo, whatever you call him. Or was it? Let me open. I have the game open. Let me open the draft class. Draft history.
So there's a lot of guys in that particular draft class that I don't think are even in the league anymore, are they?
I have no idea, to be honest.
I think there's a few.
Guys like I have no idea who's on this class. Zipser pretty much ended up being pretty bad. Saunders, I think he didn't put up any stats. Vonleh, I have no idea. I was pretty happy when I got rid of that guy. De Paula just went down with a broken elbow, stuff like that, and Beat broke his foot twice or his leg. So
that's fairly realistic though. That one, I can live with the Embiid one.
That's true.
That is true. Mirrored real life, but that's fine. Okay, so Simmons is going to be an interesting one then. I'll have to throw a scout into him and see what he looks like, because I have yet to do that. So looking at the board as well, one name that's sort of standing out to me, well, there's two really in terms of the top 20 or so picks that are sort of sitting there. One is Joshua Smith, and we'll come back to him in a minute because there's an obvious reason why I feel we should talk about him. But the other one is Moedo Low, the point guard, 6'3", who's jumped up and down this board every single iteration, and he's now jumped another 12 places up now into 17th place in the board, from being just outside the first round really. Is this hype? Is this just people recognising that we perhaps should scout some of the point guards this year, or outside of the top sort of 6, or is this a position where we think he's going to stay now?
I do believe he could rise some more because he didn't get scouted as often as he should so far. I don't know if most guys know, but Adam Rizzo put together a pretty nice tool, and we can look up everything in it. It's Excel based, and for example, we can look at how often a guy got scouted. So looking at the numbers, I think Lowe's didn't get the attention he should. Because if you compare him, for example, look at San Antonio, I think they added a good roster, but also have Klay Thompson since like 3 years. And Thompson's putting up insane numbers. He averages north of 20 points on I have no idea, let me check, 45% from 3-point, which is crazy. And I do believe that Lowe could put up similar numbers. He might not be the most fancy point guard ever when it comes to passing and defense, but his offense should be pretty good. He might be score first point guard, but one that will have a pretty good impact on the game. So people should take another look at him. I do think he could end up top 10, to be honest.
Okay, so he's probably some rising stock there with him, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so the other one that I want to talk about, just because out of interest really, is Joshua Smith. So originally I think when he started off on this board he was around sort of the back end of the first round. He's now just cracked the top 10 this board really, jumping 9 places to 10th position. So the thing that obviously I want to talk about is he is a centre, he's a fairly decent size, but his weight is 383. Is this an experiment from the draft team just to see how this does, or is this a bit of a compensation for other flaws in his game, or is this just Joshua Smith being hyped far too much and he really should be back end of the first round, second round?
Actually, I have to admit that Kyrus is creating the lists for the draft, so he chooses which player will be added to the draft class and which not. So you have to ask him about him. But the reason why he's so fat is he's in real life he's at fat too. As far as I know, we can Google it now, but I think he's 383 in real life too. So as we keep it like in real life, it looks the same.
Okay.
But overall, to talk about him a bit, I think he could end up being like what's his name again? Let me check. Like Prime Young, that Young, who was on Houston when he signed a max contract, and was also an impact player. Like I think he averaged around 19 points, 8 or 7 rebounds, some steals, some blocks, and I think Josh Smith is around that line. So he might be a guy drafted in the lottery, but he will need some time to develop. Even though his defense is already top notch as far as I remember, I think a guy who can average like 1.5 blocks and 1.5 steals right from the get-go. So I think someone could fall in love with him, and he might even get drafted in the top 10. But yeah, we will need some time to get to have an impact on the offensive end too.
Okay, so possibly a guy who needs to go to the right type of team really for him to develop his skills. Really, sounds like if he goes to, I can think off the top of my head a couple of teams in the league that if he goes to, he's not going to get the love and attention that he probably needs to develop. So down to the right situation for him, or he could end up being a bit of a waste of a draft pick really. So
I actually think that teams like even Phoenix would love to have him because he would fit perfectly into their core. Like they are, trying to get as many guys that are able to block and steal the ball, and just fit that bill. So I think he might have a good rookie season, no matter where he ends up.
Okay. I for me, I think I can think of a couple of teams where if he goes to, he won't get the either A, the minutes, or B, the sort of development time that he needs in terms of changing any preferences that he might have. I feel that there's a couple that will just ignore him, and it could cost him if he doesn't start to develop on that. So you mentioned that you guys have a spreadsheet which tracks the number of times players have been scouted, or to sort of, I'm guessing, to help build this type of board really will be one of the factors that will go into this. But so let's talk on that really. So who's the if you can, who's the top guys who have been drafted so far? Been scouted so far in this draft.
Yeah, if we look at the pure numbers, I think Fred van Vleet got hyped pretty much because I think he's the most scouted player in the entire draft, and I have no idea if he will be top 5, maybe top 10, but I don't think he will be drafted in the top 5. So GMs should not always look at the articles or on the big board, but yeah. Should also scout some later names on the board. Mm-hmm. Like if you look at point guards, we have Whitehead or Taylor. Let me check. Whitehead is actually the 21st.
Yeah.
And I have no idea where he is. Can't find him.
Taylor's 19.
He is 19th, and yeah, I think they could be higher. In my opinion, their potential lottery pick, so far they got scouted like, I have no idea, sometimes like 3 times or so, and no one even checked them. So I think people should take a look.
So did you say, so you broke up a little bit, Dennis? Did you say Whitehead and Isaiah Taylor, or were they the two that you were talking about? Right. So they're currently 19 and 21, so sort of sitting out the back end of the first round. And I think, did you say that you think they could potentially be lottery picks this year?
Yeah, right. I think so. I think the league needs point guards in general, and both of them have starting caliber potential. So everybody should take a look. Definitely all teams who need a point guard and have a pick in the range of 10 to 20.
Yeah. Okay. So, in terms of sort of those two, is it just because of position need, or do you think they actually have the talent to be lottery players?
Yeah, it's complicated. I do believe that there are better players on different positions, and that could be or should be drafted ahead of them, just due to the skill set and their strengths. But if you need a point guard, this year might be the year you get a decent one. A guy that's a third starter at least and can put up like 15 points at least, plus like 6 or 5 assists, good defense, etc. So if I could, I would draft a point guard definitely.
Okay. So in terms of other players who have been heavily scouted, are there any in there that apart from sort of the obvious ones, I imagine have been scouted left, right, and centre. Are there any others that you're surprised that have been scouted as much as they have, or that you feel have probably been overlooked at?
I'm surprised they get scouted so much as, for example, Malcolm Miller. I don't believe he might be a late first round pick, but he got scouted as often as guys in the top 5. So that's a bit weird. I have no idea if we hyped him somewhere or if he got so much attention by the draft team at some point. Guys that didn't get scouted enough are, for example, let me go through the numbers. It's a bit complicated if you have to change the documents I read. Henry Owensson, for example, didn't get much attention, even though I do believe he could be in the top 15, maybe top 20, but he got scouted like very few times, so I should take a look at him too.
He's been one who's been sort of loitering around, I'd say, from anywhere from 13 to 18 in the boards, I think, if I remember. Been a borderline lottery pick really at the moment. He's currently sitting 14th. I mean, is there something in his game that you think makes him a defined lottery player, or is it just his all-round game really that you think's balanced enough for him to be a comfortable lottery pick?
I think he's a very interesting player because he's one of the few big men able to hit threes. So he might not be a second coming of Dirk Nowitzki, but he can hit threes. He's a good ball thief. He's a decent rebounder. He has good control of the ball. So he does everything you want from a stretch 4 and maybe stretch 5 because he has the size for it. And he's definitely a better version, or way better version of Ryan Anderson, so I do believe the team that gets him will be pretty happy.
Okay. So another thing that I've noticed as well with this draft in particular is that we've got, in terms of the age range, we have got guys from like 28 all the way down to I think 19, 18. I'm not sure if there are any 18-year-olds actually, but definitely 19-year-olds. What impact do you think that's going to have? Do we think the guys that are older are going to be more developed and more ready now, or are there a couple of youngsters who you think are just as good as the older guys in this draft? How do you kind of see it all sort of playing out really if you look at this draft this time next year?
Yeah, I do believe that Teodosic will win Rookie of the Year honors because he will pretty much enter the league fully developed, as I think he's 26 or 27 out of file.
26.
Made him a bit younger than he is in real life because else it's pretty worthless to draft a guy who was like 30, especially if he's designed or should be a pretty high pick. Another one is Inglis. I think he's also one of the more developed guys, glue guy, I think, who's able to dish out assists and to play tough defense. And the younger guys, in the long run, they will be better. Definitely, they have higher potentials, and they will be the better ones. But for now, and if we look at next year, I think Teodosic and Inglis will be the front runners for Rookie of the Year honors.
Yeah, and I can see why. I mean, they're both currently on the board in the top 7. I mean, Teodosic is 7th, and Ingles is 4th, and he's been loitering around the top 5 for ages. And interesting players. I mean, they certainly are more ready now from what I've seen. Be interesting to see, like you said, do you take that gamble and take someone who's potentially younger, but potentially over the course of their career will have a bigger impact and potentially be a better player, or do you just accept the fact that you take one of the older guys and you're happy with the fact that they'll give you 4 or 5 years of really, really good play, but then after that you're back to square one again? I think a lot of it will depend on what teams end up drafting where, really. You've got a lot of teams who are already sort of playoff teams who will have lottery picks, it's whether they want to take the gamble with the younger guy or want the guy who's going to actually help them out now. So that'll be really, really interesting to see how that plays out. Are there any other guys on this board in particular that you're really excited about seeing and seeing how they do in the league for whatever reason?
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to see Malachi Richardson, or however he's pronounced. He's a pretty nice shooting guard. I think maybe the best defensive one in the league, and a guy who he reminds me a bit of CJ McCollum on Phoenix, but a better version of him, or like Gary Harris. I think he's still playing for Washington, and Gary didn't trade him yet. But he might be even better than them. So he's a guy I look forward to see playing, and I hope he doesn't bust, because that would be a shame. Another guy I'm looking forward to is who do I love? Let me go through the list. Tim Forterman. He's actually ranked 24th, and I don't think many GMs did take a look at him so far. But he's a two-way wing who's able to score, who's also able to defend. Maybe comparison could be Len Stevenson, maybe a better version of him, like a guy who's pretty efficient inside and plays decent defense, not the best, but decent defense on the other side of the court. Another one is, if we go to the second round, Davis Bertans. He's already 34, so pretty developed too. He's a guy who's able to hit from everywhere on the court, so he might be even the best three-point shooter in the league as soon as next season, even better than Klay Thompson. Also willing to let it fly, and he has the size to play like power forward too. Should be 6'9" or stuff around that. And another guy, let me name the fourth one. Jakob Poeltl. He's a decent center. I think he looks a bit like, I have no good comparison, maybe Noah. He's a guy, he won't score much offensively. Could also end up being a second coming of Willie Cauley-Stein. But I do believe he has some higher potentials. So his defensive impact should be one of the best if it comes to centers. Yeah, so maybe that are the four guys I would look forward to see.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. So, in terms of, we've talked a lot about the first round. I think now, perhaps we'll come back to those guys a little bit later. But one area that doesn't really ever seem to get picked up in draft days, in the build up to the draft, into scouting and reports is the second round really. And I think this year we've got some really interesting names on this second round at the moment on this board. Just looking down here, there's a couple that sort of stand out to me. One is Spanoulis, the 28-year-old shooting guard from Greece. The other one that's sort of sticking in my mind is certainly where is he on here actually? I can't find him on here now. I've lost him. It's Nicholas Brusino. I think initially he was hyped as possibly another Manu Ginobili. In terms of the second round on the board at the moment, what sort of value do you think GMs can get from the second round this year? Are there any sleepers in that second round, or are there any players who can actually have an impact on a roster? Because essentially that's what GMs around the league will want from a second round, is a guy they can take a flyer on who can potentially give them something in some rotation minutes.
Yeah, I do believe this year the second round is a mixture of everything. You can find some guys that are able to step in like an 8th or 9th guy, or guys that might make it in as a 12th member of the squad, so you have decent backup. If you talked about Spanoulis already, I do believe he could end up being better than an 8th guy, like 6th man possibly. I think he's ranked that low because of his age. He's 28 or something, and if his endurance boost is in 2 years, so he will be 30 already by then. No idea how good how long he will keep up his game then. By then. But you will also have some busts like every year. You know? So some guys might end up in the D League, and others could end up like being the 12th or the 8th guy on the team.
So on that list, I don't know if you've got the board up on your screen, but on that list that's currently there for the second round, is what just, you don't need to mention the guy, but what the best person that is on that list for the second round, what is the potential for them? Do we see anyone on there who could potentially be a starter for a team eventually, or anyone who can be a 6th or 7th man, or whatever it is? What's the best case scenario for that second round at the moment for one of the players on there?
I have to go through the list for a second to see who's there. I think the 6th man is the best you can get. I don't think there's a starter, to be honest.
Okay. And worst case, I'm guessing we get absolute busts who end up in the D League in 5 games, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's a nice mix for the second round, I think, this year, that potentially someone can get a sleeper who can actually help them, and potentially they could just be getting someone who's just filling contract money on their cap room. So really interesting. So let's go back up now to the first round. We've talked a little bit about Simmons, a bit about some of the other guys in the first round. What about, for example, one guy that sort of is sticking in my head looking at this list at the moment is Malik Beasley. So he is a guy who seems to have gone up and down this draft board over the past few runs of it, really. I think initially you may be able to correct me, but I think initially he was hyped as being a top 10 lock, basically. And then he seems to just drop all the way down the board and appear all the way back up the board, and he's now currently sitting in 15th. Is he a guy who has any right to be cracking that top 10, or is he kind of in the right position now?
I would be shocked if he doesn't end up top 5, to be honest. I have no idea why he's so low. Which he's 15th actually. Yeah, he's 15th. He reminds me a bit of Kobe Bryant. Maybe not the same.
That's
ceiling like Bryant had. Yeah, not the same feeling. But he will have the same game. Like, he will score from everywhere on the court, and he will be efficient from everywhere on the court. So, and could easily average 20 or more. But his defense, I think, will be a bit shaky. On the other hand, he's a very good rebounder, as far as I remember. So maybe a guy who can be the best 6 man in the league, or even a starter if you have the defenders around needed. And yeah, in my opinion, he should be top 5 or top 8 at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I don't think I've seen him crack into that top 5 yet, so that's an interesting thing. Has he been heavily scouted so far, or has he not been scouted as much as some of the top guys?
I have actually no idea. I need to check. I think shooting guards in general didn't get scouted often, so yeah, not often, to be honest, compared to other guys. So that might be the reason why he's so far below others.
Okay. So in terms of the draft, so looking at the players on there, I mean, are we looking at guys who can potentially be all-star players? I mean, outside of Simmons, we talked about Simmons being the best player in a couple of years. I think we said. Apart from Simmons, are we looking at guys who there are some in here who could potentially be all-stars, providing the voting goes right, or potentially be franchise players, or are we looking more along the lines of this is a collection of talent this year that are solid starters, possibly 1 or 2 all-stars, and that's it? What's the depth of this draft if you had to sort of weigh it up against previous drafts?
I believe it's not as top-heavy as some others. We have Simmons, definitely, who will be a franchise piece. We have like Bender and Korkmaz, which are top 3, I think, all season already. They will be possibly all-stars in my opinion. But afterwards, it will be shaky. I think the draft is pretty deep. We will have I have no idea, 40 guys that will make at least the CSL and won't end up in the G League. But between, no idea, 5 to 20, we have guys on the same level, which will end up, might not be all-stars, but could sniff, and might get some votes for all-star. Yeah, but only one franchise guy and 3 or 4 all-stars in my opinion.
Okay, so
but the rest are starters.
Yeah, so I guess we're thinking along the lines of one franchise player, a couple of all-stars, and then probably the majority of the first round, or the guys who have the talent to be in the first round. That's not saying they won't be drafted like that, to be starters on teams in the league. That is that for you, the definition of this draft being a success?
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me a bit of the first draft we had when Still Miles created the class with, was in it Austin, Levine, etc.
Yeah,
all the guys down to pick 30 are still in the league and are all starters. I think. I do believe the same could happen with this class.
Okay, that's good then. So it means that basically anyone who has a first round pick should hopefully, providing they've scouted properly, find themselves getting a solid player to actually help their team, which is a really good statement, I think.
I hope so. I hope it will end up that way.
Okay, so I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about the draft, a bit about first and second round. Is there anything else that you want to share with the viewers and listeners about this draft that you're burning to get over on this videocast? Is there anything that's you really want to talk about, or any particular guys you really want to talk about that we may not have discussed yet?
What I want to say is that I definitely learned from my mistakes when I created prior classes, so don't be afraid of another Dennis class. It's not only my work, so others help too. So, yeah, I do believe we will have a pretty good one, and we will have talent from 1 to 40 or 50, depending on what you need. And yeah, with that said, I think we will have a lot of fun during the draft day, because I think most teams have a pick, so it will be interesting, especially because afterwards the top 5 maybe it's completely open, as you have no idea where the guys will end up. Yeah, I think maybe the most interesting draft we will have so far.
Yeah, I think we'll have an interesting draft, like you said, because a lot of teams have first round picks this year, which is quite surprising from a multiplayer sim league for everyone to kind of have a stake in the draft. I mean, traditionally from leagues I've been in, I don't know about all the leagues you've been in, Dennis, but you tend to find that you have a couple of teams who have over 50% of the picks. And then you seem to find the remaining 50% are sort of held by sort of a third of the league, and then it leaves sort of almost quite a large proportion of teams, particular playoff teams, who don't tend to have picks because they normally cash them in to try and get them something to help them at the playoff time. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic works, because I think we may see a lot of trades happen on draft day. As teams start to scout more, start to get more information, the draft teams start to churn out a little bit more information as the build-up goes on. We'll be interested to see how that plays out.
For sure.
So, before we sort of end, I mean, I think we've covered everything now, but in terms of what the general managers and the other guys that are listening can expect out of the draft team in the build-up, I mean, in terms of obviously they've got their scouting now, but one of the other things is that will be coming their way will be the draft magazine. So I don't know if you want to share any sort of insights into what sort of content or how much information they may get in the magazine to whether it's worth their while, basically, is what I'm saying. Is that because obviously they're going to have to provide, I think, some couple of articles for it. I don't know if you guys have started the magazine yet, or you've just got a list of things you're going to cover. But is there anything you want to sort of say on that? Because that's, to me, is the sort of the next big piece of scouting that's going to come out after we do our monthly scouting.
Actually, I have to admit that Adam is mostly responsible for the magazine, so we will see what will be in it. But the plan is to use the YALS link we created and set up, and mostly the additional information like drive stop rate, etc. in the magazine. And yeah, so people will get a good insight about how do the draftees perform on the defensive end? How effective are they? What's their assist turnover ratio? We use the actual ratings, so people might get a feeling for how good the players will be when they enter, but it won't be very informative if it comes to potential, as far as I know.
Okay, so a bit of I guess a bit like a bit of an analytics magazine, by the sounds of it, where they're going to get a little bit more information in terms of stats, in terms of the different analytics tools they might get that they would have in the game traditionally if they were actually playing games in DDS. So certainly worth them buying into if they're looking to try and find players who can have an impact now, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, no, really interesting. So hopefully we've given the guys who've been listening in a bit of a flavour onto what the draft looks like this year. I'm sure we'll be back with a couple more video casts, either with yourself, Dennis, or some other members of the draft team, to give a little bit more insight into some particular players or how some things are sort of shaping up. But really interesting discussion, and I'm going to leave this episode, I think, with Dennis's quote of Ben Simmons being the best player to ever enter the CSL. I'm going to hold you to that, Dennis, if we come back in a couple of years' time and he is completely busted out. So
yeah, hopefully it doesn't bust.
That may be your either your saving grace, or that may be your boot off of the draft team if that happens. But I'm sure he will be as good as you say he's going to be. I'm sure. As you said, you've learnt from the previous mistakes that you may have made. So, and it sounds like the draft team's got a little bit more flavour in terms of guys who've got some experience as well this year. So I'm sure that will help. Thank you very much for joining us, Dennis. Been really interested to talk about the draft, talk a little bit about Boston. Is there anything you want to mention before we sort of sign off on this episode? Any other sort of shout outs or any other guys, just one guy to watch in this draft?
I think I named all guys to watch, but big thanks to you, because we definitely need some help in the future, as it's a lot of work to create the classes, to get out media, just to be there to entertain the guys, the GMs in the league. And yeah, I'm looking forward to have some more podcasts. Maybe next time Kairos can join too.
Yeah, absolutely. See if we can get a couple more guests next time. We could talk about some more specific things that are coming up with the draft team for sure. But no, fantastic. Let's see how this draft pans out, Dennis.